Good evening. I'd like to call the Watertown City Council adjourned meeting of Wednesday, August 16, 2017 to order. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please.
Albertson, absent. Bueller.
Here.
Danforth.
Here.
Lallam.
Here.
Manti, absent. Roby, absent. Solom.
Here.
Thorson, absent. Vilhauer.
Here.
Why?
Here.
Thank you.
We have a quorum. First item on the agenda is approval of the agenda.
So moved. Second.
Moved by Bueller, second by Vilhauer. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed?
Aye.
Okay. Item 2, presentation, review, and public input on Mayor's proposed 2018 city budget, starting with A, Building Services Department. Shelley, do you want to say anything?
As far as kind of the same rules as last time, hopefully we will get through all of the discussion points and be out of here by 9:30. That's always the goal. And I don't have any specific notes on building services, so I think I'll just turn it over to Ken. And same thing as last night, each department will have about 5 minutes to go through their accomplishments, their goals, and then the significant changes in their budget, anything that they're doing that's going to impact those goals and objectives, and then we open it up for questions. So go ahead.
Great, thank you. Good evening, Council. Building Services, accomplishments for 2017. We implemented online moving permit application as a submittal option. We finally got our full-time code enforcement officer hired and on board. And we commenced field notebooks for informational retrieval during inspections. Goals for 2018 is to expand the electronic database to include county record numbers and improve the building permit data retrieval. And goals for 2019 and beyond is to initiate in-house GIS management and implement mobile synchronization with the GIS and electronic building permit database. It's to be able to use our laptops in the field better than we currently are. We've had not much going on change. Again, we had our new personnel that come on board. So you're basically only going to see a few changes in our a little bit of salary adjustment. We did $1,500 for maintenance costs because now we have 3 vehicles on the fleet instead of just 2. Increase in training again as an additional full-time person that did that, and $1,200 adjustment to actual cost of phone monthly service. And why is that up so much, Shelley? I'm assuming that's just an across-the-board thing because I didn't really think we had that much more than anything else. But
What are you referring to?
what? It's the
Oh, for the
it's
phone?
Just the new phones. Okay.
Yeah,
that
and
was
that's been everybody across the board. Every
Okay.
department has seen that phone adjustment that's gone to the VAS system. Not every department has, but yep.
Fantastic. So, any questions? Seeing none, thank you.
It's not going to be that easy for all of you, so. Okay, next one is the city attorney department, and Justin is not here this evening, so just a couple things on the budget here. Probably the biggest change that was made in the requests, he had requested a second. Okay, gotta take my cheaters off. Can't see any of you guys. He had requested a second employee, and that was just because of workload, and then focusing maybe more on the utilities side of it. And so there were a couple of times when he felt like there might be a little bit of a conflict of interest between the city and utilities if we weren't always agreeing. After some discussion about that, the mayor's proposed budget reflects not having an additional staff person, but it also anticipates not having the utilities share the city attorney. And so we also took out the revenue source. Normally, the utilities department paid 25% of the total budget of the city attorney, and the services were shared. And so this reflects not having any revenue received from the utilities and just having the city proper pay for all of the attorney services and utilize the attorney services. And then as of January 1, the utilities would have their own attorney that they would either hire or have on retainer. So that's what the budget numbers reflect. If you guys have any questions or comments.
Every year I want to make sure I understand this. What we're showing for the expenditure is 100% of the salary, but then we show the utility reimbursement coming through as revenue, correct? Okay. And I'm assuming, if we do make this change, utilities have been in consultation with us on this as well, as far as they're okay with that arrangement?
I spoke with Steve Lehner, and he wasn't surprised. It's really, it seems logical for us anyway. He wasn't opposed to it.
Any other questions or concerns about the city attorney?
This is a minor one, but we come back to the mission statement page. The goals for 2018: update and streamline the CAFR. Okay, that's your bailiwick, right, Shelley? The CAFR. Where's the city attorney get involved in that process?
What he was helping me with is kind of a little project that we had talked about shortly after he came on board here. And it's always been a goal of mine to put together what GFOA calls a PAFR. We have a CAFR, Comprehensive Annual Financial. This is called a Popular. And it's basically your CAFR condensed into about 6 pages that's easy to understand, layman's term, that you can put out there into the public that gives people a little snapshot, but you don't have to read a 150-page document in order to process kind of the overall wellness. And we have limited, we have Excel, Word, and he had more knowledge in how to kind of do graphs and make them do funky things. So that's really what he was helping me with. I was feeding him information, and he was kind of going out and trying to put that together and help me with the graph part of it. So I'm guessing that that's what I didn't really read through that, but that's what he was kind of doing in his spare time. So I would assume that the next city attorney, if they don't have that knowledge like he had, they probably won't. And then, it'll be up to the next finance officer to see if they want to put together that popular annual financial report. So it's probably not as relevant as it was when we put the word pages together.
I guess just in general, I've seen enough of what that position entails that I'm not surprised they're making that request to go to a full-time versus a shared attorney. Are you seeing that already with in your role as mayor, Sarah, that we do have a need for a full-time rather than a shared attorney?
I've often felt that in the past as well. I know our previous city attorney used to say we need help, and he said that for years, and that we could, I don't know where we would put help, but it will help us to not have to share Justin with utilities. And he'll be completely, the new attorney will be completely focused on us.
Okay. Any other comments, questions? I don't see anybody out in the public. Okay, if not, we will move on to the police department. Lee? I don't have any additional comments, so we can just go ahead and start your presentation.
Gotta get those readers out, shall I? Do I need this? Hello? You can't steal. Oh. Should I sit over here? Let's just do that. I don't need this fancy computer. All right, good evening, everyone. I will be presenting the police budget, the animal control budget, and 911 as well. So looks like we'll start with the police department's budget. I think I have that page 99 in my stuff. I'm not sure if that's your page number, but just go through this here quickly with you. Just a couple things we noted. We had probably a full page and a half of accomplishments that we wanted to share with you, but Shelley and Kristen made us cut it down to 3 or 4. So a big part of what we do is try to maintain the public trust, and by doing that we get out and meet with a lot of different people in the community. We host Camp Chance. We do Teen Police Academy. We've done some adult academies in the past. So it goes in line with our goals to continue to forge partnerships with individuals and organizations within the town, because it helps us maintain public trust. A lot of things going on in the world today. You can see some departments are probably losing some of that trust, and we want to do everything we can to maintain that trust. So whenever we can form a partnership or work with another individual and organization towards a common goal, we try to do that. So that's one of our goals I wanted to highlight. You can see through our performance measures, our service calls continue to be in that 20,000 plus range, closing in on 21,000 calls in a year. You probably noticed our traffic tickets went up pretty significantly, and that was mostly due to a grant that the council had approved for us to apply, which allowed us to have another officer work some overtime just doing speed enforcement, and he also worked a lot of traffic, seatbelt tickets, those type of things. You guys probably see as much as I do that we have a lot of accidents within the state of South Dakota that people are dying or seriously being injured because they're not wearing a seatbelt. So the state has asked all agencies to do a increased effort to address that. So we did, within the next couple weeks, we should have a final draft of how that grant went. We were able to increase seatbelt usage within the city of Watertown, and we also were able to drop our accident numbers down a little bit. So I will send that out to you as council members and the mayor when I get that completed. On the next page at 100, you'll see we had a few adjustments there. Building maintenance, computer maintenance, equipment maintenance, those were all increased to actual costs. Just a quick snapshot of that. Let's see here. So as far as equipment maintenance goes, we budgeted that at $36,000. We had a few increases in a couple of different lines. We do pay for maintenance on our recorder system within the police department. We have to purchase and buy batteries and equipment for the officers' radios. We do a generator inspection, fire suppression inspection, air conditioner, just a couple of the bigger items. Andor does an HVAC thing for us. We do some repair work on our pumps. Total that came to known expenses to about $35,000. So we put it at $36,000 in case we have an unknown expense. Just a quick snapshot on building maintenance. We'd budgeted that at $15,000. We have known expenses of about $12,500. That includes our annual maintenance on the heating and cooling system, cleaning our carpets, cleaning supplies throughout the building. Those are a couple of the bigger items. And then on our computer maintenance, we'd increased that line as well. We have that at $85,000. We have known expenses of about $82,000. That includes our Zerker software and our teletype service, and our body cameras and our dash cameras have maintenance contracts. Other than that, the rest of those things are pretty self-explanatory. You can see we did I worked with Shelley and the mayor to get our fuel line more in line with where it should be according to the last 2 years' expenditures. Tires we took back a little bit, and the phone service we did increase as other departments have. We're paying so much per phone, and that cost is all built in. There's no maintenance that way. That's including the maintenance piece there. So, and then with our capital purchases, we're looking at replacing 15 of our portable radios. Talking with Shelley and the mayor, we're going to try to do 15 a year. We have 45 total portable radios. They're not relatively inexpensive. They're kind of a pricey item, so we wanted to budget them out for 3 years. We're looking at replacing a few different firearms. We're looking at replacing our cameras in our cars. We've had some problems with the ones we currently have, and we're looking at a different system. And then the last one is 2 new patrol cars. We had originally anticipated looking at 4, but when we got to budgeting time, we went through and did a good inventory, checked the mileage, checked the maintenance records, and we'll be able to get by just getting 2 this year. So we reduced that down to 2. And I think that's all for police. Happy to answer any questions.
Lee, what is on your under your performance measures? You list special operations. Can you describe what that entails?
Yeah, absolutely. That's pretty much any event that happens within town. Every weekend it seems like there's 1 or 2 5K runs. We have an officer that helps coordinate those because they always want an officer out there to help block a road, put up a barricade, do whatever. It's the Redland event for fireworks. It's all those events rolled into one. So he tracks everything that he has a little bit of his hand in, and so that comes to the tune of about 300 or so a year. Yeah.
Does anybody else have any other questions or?
Chief, the drug arrests,
Josh, good one. I wish I'd have pointed that out. Go ahead.
is that, what's the increase there? Is it the meth?
Mostly it is. We've had somewhat of an increase in our marijuana too, but it's mostly meth. And I wanted to point out, and I even made notes and I missed it, Josh, so I'm glad you brought that up. We are working on a couple of different strategies. One of them is the Division of Criminal Investigation is going to assign another officer to our area, so we're going to give him a house office at our building, and that'll put him working with another detective from the DCI and one of our detectives. Also, one of our detectives has been sworn in as an Attorney General's officer, so he can go outside of Watertown with these task force and work cases, because what we find out is drugs don't just stay in one place. They come in from others, and they also go from here out to others. So the ability for them to work with other agencies like Siston, Brookings, Millbank, Mobridge, all those, not Mobridge, Redfield, our area, northeast part of town, state, they can move around. So those are some of the things we're working at. So those numbers are increasing. They're probably going to continue to increase until we can get a good grip on it. And then we're hoping that they go the other direction.
Anything else? Questions, comments?
This is Adam. I do have one question. You said you're replacing in-car cameras. Is that all of the in-car cameras or a certain amount of them?
Yes, what we're looking at right now is replacing all of them. We have a mix and match. Well, we have the same brand throughout the fleet. They're just different models and versions. A couple are being phased out. And every time we send them in to get replaced, it's like it's $500 right off the top. And it's just for them to look at it. They fix it. They either send us a different one or fix it. So we're looking at a whole new system, 11 cameras for the 11 cars. That's what that $38,000 includes.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Adam.
It is Adam.
It's weird when I look out and I can't see him.
Yeah, tell me about it.
I have a question, Chief. Just in the parking ticket thing, I see we have 630 projected, and in 16 we had 945.
Basically what we do is we just try to double where we're at now. So far through this year we've issued 315, so we just double that. That could go up or down. A lot depends upon the snow event. If we get significant snow events November, December, that number will probably go up. I'm guessing we didn't have a lot of snow events January, February. That number might have been higher, so we just doubled it.
One other
move on?
question
Oh, yeah.
on your capital expenditure, just out of curiosity. Are we moving to SUVs exclusively versus the cars?
Pretty much. I think we'll have one car left after next year, and reason being is there's more room in the SUVs to store the items.
Right.
Everything's inside, so it's not out in the trunk in a car where it gets cold and hot.
Right.
So we're finding better luck with our equipment inside, and there's more room inside of those SUVs too.
I'm glad to see we're doing
Sure.
that.
If we don't have any other questions, let's move on to Animal Control Community Service Officer.
Sure. And that's on page 102 in my stuff here. I think this has been a great addition to get back under the city's control and back in the police department. We've got a lot of things accomplished, and one of the things we did last year is we were able to get him a new vehicle with a little better care for the animals and a little better as far as caring for the animals and safer for him as well. We also were able to do some stuff with his computer and his vehicle, and I know Spencer's working on trying to get him upgraded with a little better system, but they got it fixed together with duct tape and Band-Aids, and it's working right now. But one of the things we're looking at doing for next year is getting him a new radio, and we talked about possibly doing a new computer. Is that still in there, Spencer? Do you know?
Not under his budget.
Okay. As far as just one of the goals I wanted to point out that we've kind of asked him to step up a little bit is to do some more public education and seminars and maybe get on the radio a little more often talking about things that he's seeing as far as dogs running loose or dogs defecating where they shouldn't be or owners not taking care of their animals, those type of things. I think it's important that he gets out there more, goes out to some school events, gets on the radio. He did some things at Camp Chance for us this year that went really well. So we're looking for him to get out and do a more public education and more seminars next year. Just a few performance measures I wanted to point out is just so you kind of know what that position is doing. He does help us a lot with parking tickets. He issues quite a few of those for us. He's very good at doing that. He responds to a number of animal control calls, 704 predicted for this year. He had 748 last year. Total number of wild animal calls responded to, he's done 41 so far, so we're anticipating about 82, and that's just anything from a deer being struck in the road that he has to remove and take care of, or try to trap a skunk that's in somebody's yard or under their deck, or those type of things, so any type of wild animal. And then the last one is just traps. Those are how many traps he's actually set out. Somebody calls and says they've got something living underneath their deck. He'll set a trap. He's trapped a few beavers because they're wrecking trees along the river or over behind Prim now by utilities there. They were wrecking some trees for a while. So those are the things we're trying to capture there. And then on the next page, just some changes. The only changes we had in his budget is we stuck in a little extra for some travel, for some training we want him to go to. He's kind of been learning things as he goes on his own. He's done some things with Game Fish and Parks as far as trapping, but there's a pretty good school that we want to send him to, so we added a little extra into that budget to send him to that school. It's to learn how to trap for a whole week. So, Bruce, if you want to go along, we can budget for you there. And as far as capital purchases, we're looking at a new radio for him. He's got one of our old hand-me-downs that an officer had, and it's been intermittent and having some issues for him. So, we're looking at a new portable radio. That is pretty much it for animal control. Happy to answer any questions.
Just a comment, I never would have guessed 740 animal calls responded. I mean, that's 2 a day, if my math isn't anywhere near right. I mean, I would never have guessed that that's that regular of an occurrence that you're getting that kind of calls.
Yeah, and if you think about it, it's actually more than that because he doesn't work weekends. He works Monday to Friday, so, yeah.
You raise an interesting point. What happens if there's a situation on a weekend?
On the weekends, the officers take care of it usually, or we can have Glacial Lakes come out and take care of our animals for us too. Yep.
Hey, Chief, where's that training going to be located at that you want to send them to?
You know, I don't remember off the top of my head, Adam. I know it's out of state, so there is some air travel involved. That's why it's a little more expensive. And I've got him and Assistant Chief Tim Toomey looking for something maybe a little less expensive, but for now, that's the best school they could find for the price.
Okay.
Does anybody else have any other questions or comments for animal control? If not, we will move on to E911 fund. Chief?
Okay. On 911, I find that on page 105 in my stuff here. So just a couple accomplishments I wanted to talk about is we have achieved and continue to meet the emergency medical dispatch assurance standard of 95% or better. And what that means is every call that the 911 center receives, if it's some type of a medical call, we have a protocol that they're supposed to follow. And basically they're supposed to follow it word by word because it's backed up by the dispatch or the emergency medical dispatch company that sells it to us. They have a board of doctors, and it changes, and we get updates yearly, several updates sometimes, and they're supposed to follow that. If it's telling somebody how to do CPR, how to stop bleeding, turning somebody on their side or whatever, it guides them step by step. So we score those, and they score 95% or better. So that's good. The next thing I wanted to just touch on quick is Next Generation 911 has been implemented. And what that means is the state took on the 911 system. It used to be all the PSAPs, the public safety answering points, which is 911 centers. They all had their own telephone system. And so that was 33 across the state. Now we're down to 28 PSAPs, and they're all on one system that the state is using some of the 911 fund revenue to purchase. So we just finally got the last system or PSAP up and running on it within the last month. So now all of the 28 911 centers, we call them PSAPs, are all on the same system, which should save all centers money because it used to be the last system we bought was about $250,000 for a 911 system just for our one center. So take that times 33. That's a lot of money. The state can get it done by buying one system, and we all are on that. So that is finally, everybody's on it. Now they're working on getting the mapping component to work with it, that company that's been in there. And so once that's all up and running, we should all be on the same system, which there's a lot of benefits to that. We can transfer calls between agencies. We can, if we're busy, we can roll a call over to another agency to answer a call for us and help us out, those type of things. It also leads to texting to 911, which is down the road probably a year. And there's also video to 911. So if you're at a scene and a house is on fire and it's in the county and you know it's going to take the fire department 10 or 15 minutes to get there because it's a ways away, a video can be sent and they can size it up from a video. Those are things that are down the road, but they're part of the system and they will be implemented at some point in time as future technology develops. So just a couple things there. Continuing on, just some of the performance measures that I wanted to highlight. The staff continues to receive a lot of training. Last year, just over 1,000. This year, we're hoping to get them about 1,200 hours of training. They scored those EMD calls I talked about earlier. They scored 600. Well, they're hoping to score 690 of them this year. Last year, we scored just short of 500. And total 911 calls received within our 911 center, we answer for 6 counties: Coddington, Hamlin, Day, Grant, Clark, and Dual. They received in our 911 center 1,100. Well, they will receive 1,100 calls. Last year we received 11,588. This year so far we've received 5,600, so that equates to about 11,344 for the year. On the next page, we have the 911 fund. You can see that computer maintenance went up just a little bit. That's because of some known expenses. We budgeted 79. No, we had budgeted 79 in the past. This year we asked for that budget to be 83,000, which is a 4,000 increase. We have known computer costs, maintenance costs of 79,700. So we set that at 83,000 so that we could handle anything that might come up. That covers our consoles where the operators sit, and it's for the radio communication. That's a $16,000 maintenance contract. We have about $5,000 in contract for software and hardware and assurance for our recording system. Zerker's about $35,000. GIS from First District is $21,000, and West Bend Communications, we have a contract with them to maintain some of our products within the center for $1,800. So known costs are about $79,700. So we set that budget at 83. And in this one, we did actually have a phone service decrease of $4,000, and that's because we're saving some money on this new statewide 911 system. And as far as purchases, we're just looking at replacing a couple chairs, and then some of our CAD, our computer-aided dispatch workstations in the center. So when a 911 call comes in, it populates on the dispatcher screen, and they work through that. So we've been working with Spencer in his office as far as how to plan for that, and we budgeted $8,000 to do that next year.
Chief, how's Zerker working for us?
It's working very well. It's really growing momentum across the state of South Dakota. Most departments are with Zerker now, to include the state and several of the bigger PSAPs. There's still a few doing kind of their own thing, but more and more are starting to migrate to it. They've held true to their word as far as increases. We had another company prior that was anywhere from 15 to 25% increases, and Zerker's been really well at staying within that 5% range. So we're happy with them. It's been a good product, and they're pretty quick to fix issues we come up with.
Has that worked well? I know there's a lot of concern on the sheriff's department. Has that worked well for them?
Yeah, they've actually implemented some things that they didn't have before as far as jail management and civil process management. And when I've talked with Sheriff Brad Howell, he said that they really like the system as well.
Lee or Shelley, why are we projecting a decline in revenue from 2018 to 2017?
What page is that on, Glenn?
It's in the very front. The 21,000 is coming from the surcharge revenue, and that's just basically making it closer to what the actual numbers are projecting. Actual 2015. That's the $1.25, I believe, right? That we get.
Right. Which is actually 87.5 cents.
Right. In 15 it was 351,000. 16 it was 345. We budgeted 371, and we're projecting right now 342. So probably the 350 is more realistic. So it's just that it's never performed up to what we've felt that it should be, or has maybe been in the past.
And I guess maybe a related question then is, I know a year ago we get like 90% of what is collected. That goes to the county, and then we get what, 90% of that?
95.
Or the 95%. I know we were pushing to get the full 100% a year ago, and the county balked at that, and I'm assuming that never did come to pass.
Correct, and I know in talking with Sarah, we're going to do some things and probably try to get back on their agenda and see if we can't get 100%. The other five, excuse me, the other five counties we deal with are paying 100%. Kind of County is still at 95%, but we've had some discussions I have with Brad and a couple of council members, and I think there's some support there to get to 100%. We just need to get back on their agenda, and they want the mayor to come along, because when we ask for money, they want us to bring the mayor.
Lee, when we get done, when the dust settles at the end of the year, how much is the city of Watertown and subsidizing? What's our subsidy amount above and beyond what we have for the revenues from the counties?
325.
Yeah.
325,000 is what the
transfer. We
transfer.
budgeted 350, right, Shelley, and it was around 325.
We budgeted 350,000 for 2017, and that was to ensure that we would get into the positive cash flow. And we have done that, and we're anticipating that for the end of the year. So we dropped it to 325,000 for 2018. So that's what the city is subsidizing over and above.
'Cause if I recall, and don't hold me to these numbers, but it seemed like when I first came on the council 6 years ago, that number was about 160,000, if I remember right.
You're correct, yeah.
Yep.
So in 6 years, that's doubled.
Yep.
And
the cost of technology, basically.
Is
And
that a trend
manpower.
we're going to continue to see?
It has slowed down in the last couple of years. We'd stayed at 300 for a couple of years, but Shelley wanted to do 350 last year to get to that positive cash flow, and now we're looking at 325. And if we can get to 100% with Kyneton, I think that'll help. Possibly we could even go back down a little bit next year at 19. That's
I
our
mean, because
hope.
you know what, the thing of it is, be interesting to look at it, but I assume our county populations aren't really growing that much when we look out at the other counties. And then with such a saturation of everybody having cell phones, it's usually replacement phones more than it is new phone numbers. So unless the state does something with that fee, that's going to become a stagnant or reducing income stream for us, and the city will just continue to be responsible for more and more and more of that.
There is a lot of discussion with finance directors across the state and PSAP directors across the state, and trying to get that to be somewhat of an annual increase, because it's stagnant, like you said. It was 75 cents for years, finally went to $1.25, and now they were looking at sunsetting that back to $1 at the end of, I think it was 19, but they put another year on that now with this last year's legislation, so they're leaving it at $1.25 for an extra year. But in the meantime, what they're asking for PSAPs and county commissioners and whoever, all your associations, to get together is to figure out what it is really going to cost. The state put in that new system, like I'd mentioned earlier, across the state, and if it would revert back to $1, they wouldn't have enough money to fund the system past a couple of years, so there's a definite need to address that. They did prolong it, so it wouldn't be an issue as soon, but it gives us more time to get hard, raw data. Across the state, we're seeing different numbers fluctuate with cell phones. It tends to climb, and then it drops a little bit, and then it tends to climb, and we're trying to figure out through our cell phone companies, why is that? Are they not reporting accurately? Are people really dropping phones? Are people leaving? They're trying to get a real good grasp on that. In fact, Minnehaha County, they watch theirs really close because they have a large budget, and their numbers drop monthly, and then they go up, and then they drop, and they're trying to figure out why that is. They've actually written a letter to legislative audit to do a little better checking to find out, because they now get the money, Department of Revenue, right? They get the money. And so used to be a city like Shelley could find out why Sprint was behind, or Verizon, or somebody didn't have the right amount that they had last month. Now we can ask the is it legislative audit? I think it's who looks into it. And they can't release it to us because it's proprietary information, but they can go check and try to find out, but it's probably not on top of their list of things to do, so they don't maybe get to it, or they don't do it unless it continues more than a few months in a row. So those are a few things that we're looking at trying to do to address some of those issues. Yes? Anything else?
Okay. If there are no other questions, thank you.
Thank you.
Chief McPeak. Go enjoy the rest of your evening.
Yes.
Whew, all the hard work is done now.
I told the fire chief you just got to be in good with the finance director and get earlier on that.
Yeah. Yeah, chocolate will get you a long way in my universe. Just saying. All right. Next up is library, and then the library fines fund. And for the, if you're not familiar with the library fines fund, the library and the library board is set up by state statute. They're also allowed to have what is called a library fines fund, and that's kind of as it says, that's the revenues from any of their fines and other revenue sources. And that is up to the discretion of the library board. And the library board has determined that most of the costs for their computer and technology needs will come out of the library fines fund. And then the regular library department, which is within the general fund, takes care of all of their personnel and day-to-day operating budget. And welcome Dee Dee, who is the newest library director of now a couple months.
Yeah.
Yay! She keeps coming back, so that's a good thing. Welcome. This is your first budget hearing. So as the rest of the departments have been doing, you just, if you want to, we'll start with the library, and then we'll answer all those questions, and we'll go to the library fines fund. So if you just want to take a couple minutes, go through any accomplishments, goals, and then just kind of go through the significant budget and personnel changes that you want to address, and then we can open it up for any questions. Okay?
Sounds good. Thank you, Shelley. And hello and good evening, Mayor Karen and Council. As Shelley said, my name is Dee Dee Whitman, and I am really honored and privileged to be the new library director here in Watertown. For those of you who may not know that I grew up going to the library here in Watertown, and so it's a real passion of mine that the community continues to be served by a library full of high-quality services and good people. And we're really blessed in that we have so many good people. We're still looking for new people as part of our big transition here in 2017 with myself being in a new position, and then we're in the process of finding 3 new people. So that's not really an accomplishment, more of a going on. But in terms of our accomplishments, one of our goals was to be continuing to add new services in varied formats. And so we added the One Play gaming service through the library vendor recording books. And so far, it's very new. We've only had it online, I think, for about a month now, so I don't have a lot of data on that yet. But I've had a lot of excitement around being able to play video games for free. My favorite so far is Lego Harry Potter, so y'all should check that out. We also were working on replacing our analog security cameras with digital ones, and I believe we're at a point where we only need to replace 8 more, Spencer? Something like that? Maybe it's 12. So that will be an ongoing process as well, and we have that set in our goals for 2018. Another big goal for 2018 is to begin a strategic planning process for the library. We want to make sure that we are serving the community in the best ways possible and to the best of our abilities. So we are going to be, I'm going to be working with the library board on that so we can begin with a community analysis and see where our needs are, where we're meeting them, and where we could do better as well. After 2018, we're hoping to maintain our exemplary level of accreditation from the South Dakota State Library. So that's right on target with my goal of making sure that we have a quality library here in town for many generations to come. And then to continue to send our staff for training opportunities. It's really important for our staff to know what's going on in the library field here in South Dakota as well as around the nation if possible. We're also looking to be doing a facility assessment. Our building is about 10 years old now, and there's some wear and tear going on, and so that will be coming up in 2019 and beyond as well. Things like having to replace carpet, and I think that might be one of the biggest ones right now, is the carpet. But if we're looking at our performance measures, we're really on track for meeting a lot of the goals that we had met in 2016. We do have some highlights, and that is we are on pace to make our 250,000 number of total circulation of library materials. And I get a lot of questions of, well, we've got the internet now, do we need a library anymore? And out of those 250,000 circulations, 87% of that is physical materials, so books, newspapers, magazines, things of that nature. So even though we do have, we are growing our online presence with our electronic items, and you can see that as well. We're up a good deal on those this year. We're still having a lot of usage with our physical traditional library materials, if you will. I'm also excited that we are at over 6,000 for our library program attendance so far this year, so that's putting us on a pace to hit 12,000, I'm hoping, this year, which would be about 1,400 more than last year. And in my previous position as the children's librarian, I was really pushing to have more programs to reach more children and families, and I hope we can continue that goal as we get a new staff member and transition to a new programming librarian. In terms of the budget and personnel changes, it looks like there's some changes to insurance premiums, and I don't know much about that, Shelley. That's building things, correct? Sorry.
Yep, and that's up to the finance office. We get the renewal, and so we look at the actual, and then we usually add 3% because that's usually about the overall cost, and then that gets put in. So.
Okay, thank you, Shelley. And then in terms of other additions, if you will, so we've got an adjustment for cleaning supplies. We have a new maintenance worker who's doing a really great job with the library. We get a lot of compliments about how clean the library is and how tidy everything looks, but that has cost us a little bit more in terms of those supplies. We also had an increase because of the monthly phone service. We've heard that one a few times now, I'm sure. And then we've had an increase of $1,950 for our travel expenses and personnel, because in the previous year we actually had the South Dakota Library Association conference here in Watertown, and so we saved quite a deal on travel and accommodations for that. So now we have to put that funding back in place so we can make sure that we're attending our State Library Association conference. And I think that's about everything for increases. Oh, I'm sorry, there's one more that I don't think is listed under that significant budget and personnel changes, and that is ongoing maintenance for the internet content filter. There's going to be a software cost that I discussed with Spencer, and we're thinking about $2,500, and that will be from the general fund and not the fines fund. Are there any questions? Hopefully I have answers.
Dee Dee or Shell, I've got a couple. The salary decrease, is that just because, again, losing a long time person on the pay scale? And okay, that's what
yeah, and if you look at 2017, you'll see that was exceeded because of the fact that we had a long-term employee retire and that payout. But yeah, there's actually 3 positions that are open, including the new director. So all of those will start at a lesser. So yeah, it all kind of added up in 1 year.
And a follow-up question on the library fines fund. Shelley, explain again. You alluded to, but what can that be used for? The kind of the rules to the library fines fund is up to the library board to determine, and really where they've put their focus on is the technology side of it. So computer replacements, software upgrades, printers, copiers, those type of things have been used from the fines fund. I know a few years ago they had quite a high fund balance, and they had spent that down significantly on a couple big conversion projects. And so now we keep track of that and make sure that it's in that 35% range that has been agreed upon by the council and the library fine, or the library board. 35. You lost me. What's the 35?
Their fund balance should not be more than, I believe it's 35% of the total library budget, and so we keep track of that and just make sure that what they're taking in and what they're using, what they have left over, is consistent with that. And I think when they had that high fund balance, that's something that was agreed upon, unless they were saving additional funds for a certain project. So, go ahead.
I was the liaison at that time, Glenn, and there was an issue that had come up in regards to the fund balance that they had in their fines fund. And when that got looked at, the state statute allows for this fine fund, but it defines also where those incomes can come from. And there were a number of incomes that were coming from city-supported items that were going into the fines fund, and this fines fund was accumulating. So at the time, I'm trying to think, was that Mayor Williams? Might have been at the end of Mayor Williams, I think. I believe it was. And so what we did is we sat down and we reached an agreement that we set a percentage. We'd leave their income stream the same, and that we would, in turn, set a maximum amount based on their annual budget as a percentage. And anything that went beyond that then would come back into the general fund. Okay, so it was a way of not controlling, but better managing that number versus just having them come to the city for more dollars and then this fund keep growing. There was no purpose for it.
Okay,
So
I appreciate knowing that, because this is the first time I've heard the 35%. I've asked this question before, but I've never had the 35% laid out to me, because obviously where I was going with this is, okay, is this fund balance higher than it should be? Now that you put it that way, and because that fund balance is like $280,000 at the end of last year, which would be roughly in line. That 35% would be in the ballpark. So I appreciate knowing that. So we have set some parameters that we are watching that library funds balance. And okay, good. Thank you.
Yep. And you know, the library has been really good about working with that and anticipating the revenues and finding it's not hard. You guys have a lot of computers. You have a lot of technology over there. It's not hard to find places to keep your technology updated. And so we really haven't had a problem. We haven't had any need to transfer any of that excess fund balance into the general fund as of yet. So I think it was a good number. I think it's been working really well. And since that time, they also have not come and said, we have a special project we want to accumulate funds for. So, you know, I think it's working well.
Again, thanks for explaining that.
Is there any other questions on the library side? If there is not, we're talking about the library fines fund. But if you just want to quickly, there isn't much to the library fines fund itself. Really no performance measures or anything, but if you just kind of want to go through what your planned spending is for that fund, then we can answer any questions.
Sure, yeah, the bulk of it is for the computers and equipment, and I believe that Spencer has the more detailed list about that. I don't know if he wants to speak to that. But I also, before you do, Spencer, there is a line for programming from the fines fund. So all of the library programmings for kids, teens, and adults comes from the library fines fund.
Do you want to know what the computers we're getting are? We are, let me see here. We are going to look at replacing the wireless access points there, and then also we are replacing all of the office licensing, so it's up to 2016. Very common. You might have seen the software on all of the departments. We're trying to get everyone on the same version of Office so that next time we buy it, we can keep everyone on the same version for compatibility reasons. And then 5 computers. And then with the wireless networking, we also have to buy switches.
When's the last time we changed or we purchased the computers we're replacing? How old are they?
I have that.
while you're doing that, are these employee computers or are these library user computers?
To be honest with you, they're probably around 5 years old. I can get you an exact number, but they're all staff computers. We currently are utilizing probably 7, 8, 9-year-old computers that we got as donations from Lake Area as the public computers in the lab, with the goal that when we replace these 5 and maybe a couple other ones throughout the city, that we'll be able to replace 1 row in the lab per year, and then we're going to try to get a rotation going. So we always use used computers since I've been here in the lab environment. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay.
Any other questions for Spencer? Okay, thank you, Spencer. Any other questions for Dee Dee regarding the library or library fines or anything library related in general? Okay. Thank you, Dee Dee, for your time. I appreciate you being here.
Thank you all.
First one down, many more to go? Yeah?
Yep.
All right.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Okay. Next on the agenda is Sioux River Watershed Project.
I promise to try to stay close to 5 minutes. Good evening, Council, Mayor. We'll jump right in with the 2017 highlights. I know the things that are in the book look pretty decent, but some of the numbers that go behind them. In the last year, we've helped reduce some nutrients, nitrogen by 1,489 pounds annually, phosphorus 311 pounds annually, sediment 35 tons annually. And these are the pounds of nutrients that are not coming down the watershed because of the work that we've done with this project. The final numbers are not in yet. We run another GERTS report in September and another one in December. So those numbers will go up as the year goes on. We've helped protect 600 lineal feet of shoreline. It's either has been protected this year or is under construction or will be constructed yet this year. We've coordinated the creation, or we started the project for the creation of a 26-acre wetland mitigation bank. This is up in the watershed area. It'll capture erosion, slow water movement, and it will also be a benefit to our local developers who have to mitigate a wetland project. This will be a bank that they can buy into and help mitigate those projects, those issues in those projects. We've opened the discussions for the need of a master plan of Compesca. We'll see where that goes. And we've been monitoring the E. coli at the city, Stokes Thomas City Park, the beach there. That's been going really well. Short-term goals, Mayor Summit coming up on the 20th of September. That should be quite a program we're putting together. Roundabout planting, grassed waterways, riparian buffer strips. As the crops come off, we can get back in the fields and do some more construction and erosion control up there. Long term, we'd really like to push for the master plan for Compesca, Pelican, and the river corridor. Continuing with the BMPs, the best management practices to stop that erosion and nutrients from coming down the watershed. Continuing our education programs and any other little projects that we can help out with throughout the city. I'm kind of following Shelley's outline here, but the one weird budget item, it says it jumps like 1,000%. That's in our other supplies. And the funds for that are grant funds that we get at the beginning of the grant cycle, and they sort down through. But we're going to have, and those are used for drafting software. That's the big one. We use AutoCAD for some of the engineering stuff that we do. It's now, they've gone to a subscription thing. So it's like you got to repurchase that software every 3 years. And that's a big part of that cost. And other supplies, office furniture, if a chair breaks, building repairs, well, we had a window broken, postage, mileage, et cetera, that kind of stuff. The project is on schedule to meet our goals on the grant program by the end of the segment, and plus other additional tasks as assigned, monitoring the FEMA shoreline work. We're monitoring various erosion and drainage issues throughout the city. With that, I would be open for any questions.
Roger, what did you say the nitrogen amount was?
1,489 pounds.
Okay, and where do those numbers come from? Are those?
With the practices that we do, like say we put in a stock dam, or we clean out a stock dam. The sediments that we remove from that hole in the ground contain a lot of the nutrients that travel with the water. With the DNR, we use a program called Step L, which puts a number to the average nutrients that are found in that type of soil or that type of product. DNR monitors this, and we send it all into the state, and we run a GERTS report, and they give us the accumulations back. Like an agway system, if we put in a berm and we stop all the manure from leaving that place, we can count that as a reduction so that manure is no longer coming down through the system. We can count the pounds of nutrients that we've captured that way. That's the the nitrogen, the phosphate, the sediments. We even do base oxygen demand or biological oxygen demand. All those nutrients we can measure.
If I can, Glenn, I got a couple of questions on this. So if we go to the phosphorus plant, and how much does that remove a year?
With the experiment that we were doing, we've removed all of 12 pounds of phosphorus over that 3-year experiment. That is no longer operating, where the building and everything is still on our property books. We're currently negotiating with another company to take it to the next level, but we're still working on budget issues there.
So that is not operational? Right
Not
now.
at the moment, no.
Okay. So if we look at the line item on here where it says phosphorus facility, what is that? What are those dollars there then?
The 10,000 is to keep the building from falling apart. A little bit of electricity. There's a couple of pumps that need to remain operational just for infiltration. It pumps all the ways to Jackson Park. It's a 125-year-old building.
Mhm.
It takes a little bit of funds to keep that thing from falling apart.
Is that building going to go away? I mean, should it go away?
The company that I've been working with are willing to do an assessment or a survey of the building, and I would like to save as much of that structure as possible. If it's functional, if it can be functional, I would love to save it for the historical value of it. But if it's not going to work, we'll have to make adjustments.
And what's the time frames for that type of work that you're doing with that?
Well, as soon as I can arrange $4 million, we'll make it happen.
Well, their assessment,
that's a $50,000 engineering study that needs to be done. I do not have the funding for that yet, but I'm trying to get it.
Roger, you had a couple of questions, or Shelley. The other financing source, 100,000, is that again 50,000 from our general fund and 50,000 from the utilities? Am I correct in that? Okay. Secondly, okay, as I understand it, you had a federal grant that ran out here, or is in the process of running out within this past year. And that has not yet been replenished or restored. Is that correct, Roger?
We have EPA funds through the state of South Dakota for the line items of grazing management, grassed waterways, and CRP incentives. That contract expires in July of 18. However, I am asking for an extension of just in time to give us another year that we had originally planned on to further spend down those funds.
So it's still business as usual for the time being then?
Correct.
Okay. I apologize. I was probably only half listening. The Mayor's Summit, that's coming up next month, right?
That's correct.
Okay, that's under a 2018 goal. That's what was confusing me.
Sorry.
But that is coming up. So I guess I would encourage people show an interest in that. Is that at the event center?
Yes, that will be at the event center.
Roger, I want to ask a question. I want to go back to the phosphorus facility or the water treatment facility.
Mm-hmm.
Have you had discussions with current mayor, previous mayor on the preservation of that building? I've never heard this before. I wasn't even aware that the phosphorus facility wasn't operating. But has there been discussions with the city in any manner on the preservation of that facility?
For the preservation of the building itself, no. For the next level of phosphorus removal from Lake Compesca, yes. I did attempt to put it on the capital improvement long-range plan, but the funding just isn't there. Apparently, it got taken off. I would be more than willing to have those conversations with anyone who would listen.
And you may recall Roger did present a work session here 4 or 5 months ago?
Yes, I did.
On the phosphorus removal plan. So we were aware that the testing process was no longer being done, and he was pushing the big scale project now, and that's what you're referring to.
Correct.
Other questions regarding the budget for the Upper Big Sioux watershed project?
Well, I just want to mention, especially for the newer council people, if you, and I don't know, Roger, I really enjoyed several years ago when I first started as a council person to when we had that bus tour that kind of showed some of the work you've done up north. That was beneficial for me to see, and I don't know if that's possible. I would encourage any of the new council folks that haven't had that opportunity to do that.
I took that same tour about a year and a half ago, or maybe 2 years ago now.
It's been a couple of years.
And very, very helpful to me too, and would like to see it done again.
Set it up. We'll be there.
We can make it happen.
Okay. If there aren't any more questions, comments, then
Thank you.
thanks, Roger. Next on the agenda is fire ambulance departments. They are tracked separately, but it's basically the same department with the same staff, just in two different capacities. So we'll go through the fire department first, and answer any questions, and then we'll address the ambulance service department. So, Doug, if you want to go through the fire.
Very good. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Council. Talk a little bit about our 2017 accomplishments. First thing we have on there is some of our SCBA, are basically our air packs for firefighting. We've started moving to the new G1 series air packs about 4 years ago now, and planning to update those. We're doing a truck at a time because they're very expensive, and just to meet budgets and stuff. We've also looked at, we've picked up a number of Homeland Security grants for the air packs, and we've taken advantage of that on a lot of our older packs a number of years ago. But with that, since that, we've kind of concentrated more on the digital radios, item number 2. So finishing up with the air packs, we're basically down to, on our main pumpers, 1 truck. So, and then our main pumpers will be taken care of. So, moving on to the radios, digital radios, we're running into the same problem as the police department. The state's moving to a new trunking system, and we have to have those radios replaced by the year of 2023. So we've been planning for that for a couple years now, picking up some funds through Homeland Security to take care of those radios. We're going to continue to stay aggressive on that, and we feel that we will be able to stay ahead of that for the most part, providing the funding is there. Also the other things on there is obviously the purchase of a new fire safety house. That is in process right now. As you know, most of you know, I presented, I believe, to work session here a while back on the safety house, and the old one was a 2-story safety house built in 1994, and it's a 2-story, and it's really served a lot of kids, but it's starting to become of age. It's very tall. It won't fit into a 14-foot door building. Obviously, it can't go down the road very far because it hits a lot of trees and stuff because of the height. So we've worked with the community and got a lot of donations to introduce a new children's safety house. The new one is currently being built and is roughed in. It's out at Station 2. Watertown Area Home Builders has jumped on board and has basically donating all the labor and lining up all the building materials and the design and the whole 9 yards for that unit. And it's built on an ice castle frame, so it's able to, you hit a button and hydraulically it'll drop down, and kids in wheelchairs and things like that, handicap, can use it. We only have about a foot of height difference, so all we have to do is a very small ramp and can use that in a lot more areas. Moving on to the goals for 2018, improve public safety. continue to apply for these grants, picking up our radios and things like that. We're part of the South Dakota Task Force, Watertown, Rapid City, and Aberdeen and Sioux Falls. And this task force team was introduced and is funded by the Department of Homeland Security. We used to be called a hazmat team and a USAR team, and now they've combined everything. And we have a lot of specialized training and equipment that the Department of Homeland Security picks up and helps us out with. And it's a great asset for our local community, because anything that happens in those specialized areas, we are first on scene and can take care of those problems and have the equipment and the training to do that. Such as when the building collapsed in Sioux Falls, our team was actually we responded down to that building collapse for the second 12-hour segment of that search mission. So, looking also continuing to increase our smoke detectors. We are currently putting out about 250 smoke detectors a year into the community. They're free of charge. We're picking up some grants for those. They do have a 10-year battery, and it's really worked out well. So we want to at least maintain that 250, if not even improve it a little bit. So we've targeted some areas in town where we know there's not a lot of detectors in certain areas, and encourage anybody that's listening to call the fire department if you want some smoke detectors. Working on the new fire truck is another goal for 2018. Obviously, these trucks are very complicated and they're very expensive, so we want to make sure we're doing our homework to put the best truck on the road that's going to last for a number of years, and make sure it's doing everything we need it to do as a truck. In Watertown, most of our trucks are set up so if we respond to a car accident, we have the capability of moving right from that emergency scene out on a highway right to a structure fire or to a hazmat incident. So basically all of our equipment is on that truck, so we don't have to go back to the station and reload our staffing into a different truck. So that's the way we operate in Watertown. It works very well. The last item for 18 is increase the number of training events for the training facility out there. We've entered into a really good partnership with LATI and on the training center, and there's a lot of neat things that have happened out there over the last couple of years. We're getting a lot of the big projects just about to the finish line. One of them is our new training, our burn tower. And this is just about completed and finished, and we're in the testing phases of it. But basically, it'll generate some smoke and light heat, and basically it gives our firefighters live training in a fire situation. Gives them a little bit of heat, and it's very well monitored, and we promote safety as number one. So we're testing it and building protocol for that, and the fire med students from LATI will also be using that facility. So the other thing that we are doing out there is we're putting a pad. We have to have our live burns for the ARF firefighting. We're bringing that portable plane. We have to. We're mandated to have that training every year, and so running out of room for maneuverability out at the airport. So what we're looking at doing is putting a training pad out there to where they can set up that right on the training ground, and we can bring our crash trucks right down the hill from the fire station and do that. So moving on to 2019, just planning for future operations in fire and EMS, and I feel that's a big part of my job. I got a great staff. Take care of. We got a lot of good firefighters and paramedics, and all the way up and down from our newest firefighter to my operations chief. So it really allows me to really look and have a vision for the future and what the needs are going to be for our community. So continue to look at everything and try and stay focused on what we'll need in the future. Last thing I have on 2019 and beyond is identify a site for the new East Fire Station. And what we're looking at is we're going to be moving into computer software this year that's in 2018 that will be, it's called ImageTrend. We currently use it in EMS right now, and it's really working great. I will talk about it a little bit more on the EMS side, but we have currently we are not in that software system for fire, and it's worked out really well. What we really want to do is set up some zones, if you will, some imaginary lines, and track call volumes, response times, and heat maps and things of certain areas on our fire calls as well as our EMS calls, and really identify some needs on how many calls we would have beyond that imaginary line. So we'd set the city up into 3 zones. And I think it'll just really, collecting that data over time will really help us get some good, valuable information on where we should put an East Fire Station eventually when that day comes. And I think more or less just identifying an area where it would really be good to reduce our response times. So that's what we're really looking at on that, and just giving us some good information to do that with. So also in fire, we're looking at about 455 fire calls this year, and 440 fire calls, and that number stayed pretty stable. We do have an increase in fire alarms, and overall our goal is to reduce our actual fires. And as we add more systems, more fire prevention systems, protection systems, we're going to have increased alarms and stuff, and that is what we're looking at and stuff. And it all depends on our operation. You'll see moving forward, it's that can change a little bit. Some departments will run EMS on a two-man engine company for fire, and some, like in Watertown, sometimes we'll have to send another rig out, and sometimes we'll have 3 people on an ambulance, 3 of our firefighters on an ambulance. So it all depends on the situation and which station is coming from. So that is pretty much it from that standpoint. We track all of our training, and we do a lot of training both in fire and EMS. So that's about what I have for that performance measures. And if we can go to the next page. Just very quickly, we increased our revenue by about $5,000 this year. I'm sorry, about $10,000 in our budget, and from various sources, and our charges for goods and services. The next item I have, the first item on budget changes. We're looking at redesigning our fire prevention division. We currently have a firefighter on an assignment, and it's basically a fire prevention officer. So what we'd like to do is realign that and go to a fire marshal, and we want to do that because we really want to look at how we're doing ordinances and get some consistency. Also, this position approves all of our fire protection systems as the plans come into the building department, and really identify those areas and stuff. And we feel that would be a great need to make sure we're increasing on all that and move to a fire marshal position. If granted that, what we would then do is remove our fire prevention officer, which is an assignment, and actually we would increase our EMS assignment, which I can talk a little bit more. That would move another staff into that 40-hour Pittman schedule. So that's what we'd like to do with that one. Next item is increase in insurance premiums, adjusted to cost. The item after that is hydrant rental. That took a pretty good jump this year, went up $16,920. Usually goes up several thousand a year. I believe we jumped roughly from about $155,000 for annual to about $172,000.
What's the reason for that, Chief? Well, why does it escalate so much?
I can answer that.
Please do.
All right.
I figured maybe something.
Last year, the utilities hired a company to do a study. And that company came back and made the determination that based on all of the infrastructure and maintenance costs of the hydrants, they felt that they were significantly underfunded. We are being charged $110 per hydrant currently, and they were recommending about $342 per hydrant. At the time, Mayor Thorson talked to utilities and said that's very cost prohibitive. We didn't have a revenue mechanism. And so they did nothing for last year, said that they were going to look at it. So this year we were notified when they sent their information that their plan is to increase that amount 10% every year for 10 years to get it up to that. So this is the first 10% bump, and you'll see a 10% increase, including any additional hydrants that they add to what they currently have, because you pay per hydrant. So there will come a time when this will be quite expensive, and as a city, I know we've talked about adding like a fire hydrant type of a fee onto the utility bill to help offset the cost. At some point, this will be close to a $400,000 annual expense, and will probably need to be reviewed and looked at to see if there are some alternative revenue sources, if our sales tax doesn't significantly pick up in the next 3, 4, 5 years. But that's why this is that first 10% increase.
That would appear like there should be some additional discussion from the city standpoint with the utilities to further understand that. That seems ludicrous to me, quite frankly. But obviously they set that direction, but I think we very clearly need to understand where that's coming from.
I know there was a study done. I know that was forwarded to the previous mayor for review. I don't know if...
I also, as liaison, I do have a copy of that study. I mean, you're pretty well spot on as far as the way you are explaining it, Shelley.
Yeah, and I don't know if Mayor Karen has had a chance to find that or look at it or review it, but, you know, I guess you guys can give her direction on future discussions, but at least for this budget, that's what they said to anticipate. That's what they are going to bill us each month for our hydrant rentals.
I would like to see that. I haven't seen it. I am interested in looking at it. And I will say one thing we're really proud of in this community is our low utility rates. And having this hydrant fee funded by something outside of the water utility enables us to continue to offer low utility rates, which is an advantage to our community in many ways. If we want to discuss that, there's tentacles going back and forth. It's not just hydrant rentals. I mean, money goes back and forth between utilities and the city, and you really can't focus on just one little piece of it. You need to look at the big picture.
You know, it might not be a bad idea to have a work session, because I know it's been an ongoing discussion. I've been liaison now for the last 2 years, and that's been a very hot topic between the previous mayor and the utilities. I think the utilities would appreciate an opportunity to express their point of view on it. So I would encourage or have an invitation as a work session sometime just to lay out and explain you know, what does go on back and forth, like you say, Mayor, an awful lot of things that move back and forth, services as well as dollars that move back and forth between the utilities and the city.
Okay. Just to finalize the last couple items that I have. Siren maintenance, we did show siren maintenance. We did show a decrease of $2,000. We went from $3,000 down to $1,000, and I would just like to make the comment that was kind of a mathematical error. how we entered it, and basically did not mean to decrease that line item by $2,000. I do have some software needs in that one. My licensing is about $800, and we usually end up with a pretty steady about $1,000 just on maintenance. They're basically on these computers and stuff. So, so with that, I guess I'm just asking what everybody's thoughts are on that one, because if I don't get the increase now, I'm probably gonna. It might be something I'd have to do a supplement for. So anyway, that's about the main one that I have left. Obviously, the phones that had an increase of about $4,500, and then our turnout gear, bunker gear, is an increase of $9,000 in our budget. That's a capital purchase to keep replacing our gear and keep on task with that to make sure our gear is getting replaced. And we have a great maintenance program. That stuff's very expensive. It runs about $2,500 a set. And sometimes we'll have boots wear out or we'll burn a coat or something, but we wash our gear every time after a fire, and we inspect our gear annually to make sure that there's no rips or tears and stuff to make sure we can get the full life out of those gears and send it away. So the other ones is $4,500 for hoses and nozzles, replacing some older fire hose and stuff. We got some hose on some of our older equipment that's from the late '80s, and we're phasing a few. We have a few feet to phase out of that stuff yet. So obviously we destroy some hose. That comes out of our budget, but this is kind of some replacing some older stuff. So anyway, that's about what I have on fire.
Shelley, in other words, what you're requesting is for the 2,000 to be put back in.
Yes.
To where these numbers
just
are at.
My mistake.
I mean, if we're going to have to supplement it later, we might as well get it in there up front. So I would suggest that.
Which item was that?
Siren maintenance.
Is that the
tornado sirens? Yes.
Sirens?
Yeah. We have a local contractor that goes out and works on those. If we have a battery charger or something that's acting up, we get a computer, and then part of it is license. We have to pay to get licensing updates for that computer. So
we need a motion to put that back in. Is that correct? Okay. If anybody, are we done?
I do have one question. What roughly what is the salary for the fire marshal position?
What is the salary?
Yeah.
Well, is the full salary, Shelley, the 75 with benefits, insurance and stuff, I'm assuming?
Yeah, we estimate at a grade 7,
Okay.
correct? Yeah.
And Doug, what's the advantage of us going from what we have as far as the, what was it, a fire prevention officer to a fire marshal? What do we get for that?
Yeah, so some of the advantages are the training that we provide. Right now it's the level that fire prevention officer is basically the same level as my junior firefighter. He's just on assignment, so there's really no difference between that and my junior firefighter. So we have this person taking care of all the code enforcement with all the businesses. Also signing off on large buildings, fire protection systems. There's a lot of training and education that's involved in that. Basically, they're signing off that says that system is okay, working with the engineers. When a Walmart or Hobby Lobby comes in, that all has to get approved by the fire department. And we never did any of that a number of years ago. That was all done upstairs in the building services. The fire department in a lot of towns have started helping the building services out with the fire protection system. So that would be some of the things. Also, he's helps with all building of all the fire ordinances and issuing permits for anything from underground tanks storage to the fire protection systems, the sprinkler systems. It all gets approved. So
in essence, we really not going to get more out of him. We're just getting him into a title and grade that best reflects what he's doing.
Yes.
Okay. One last question.
Hey, Chief, this is Adam. I do have a question. What's the difference in pay between what it is, what he's currently at, and what it will be?
I have to think. He's been here a long time, and there's less of an increase than if we would hire a new employee. I'd have to go back and look. That I don't have off the top of my head, and I don't want to throw a number out there and be just completely wrong. But it's for some reason I just want to say it's like five-ish, about 5,000 different.
That's what I was going to estimate, that 5,000 to 6,000, depending on where it lands.
Yeah.
And that can be awarded to him and not opened for as a job opening?
No, we would
No,
have to. We'd
it-
have to go through
yeah.
the whole process.
Yep.
Okay,
It's
that's
a
what I
new
thought.
position, so it would be opened, and it's the way that the budget was put together. It's anticipated that is a grade 1 or step 1, grade 7 position, and Chip is still sitting there at his current wage of a grade 5, and so all of that, if that is approved, then that would go through that entire process, and if he decides to apply for that position and he's deemed to be the best person for that job and hired, then his position would be vacant, and it would either be a 3.5% increase or the grade 1 of that 7, whatever is greater. And so that's kind of how we do our promotional opportunities here per it's our personnel manual.
The only other thing is just to go back to your burn tower.
Mm-hmm.
I have gotten comments on that from people as to A, what it is, and B, is it always going to look like that? Is it always going to look like that?
Have you seen it in the last week?
I haven't the last week.
Okay. It's
So-
been all painted.
Oh, has it? Okay.
Yes, and we've painted it with a. We wanted to really blend it into the landscape a little bit. We had to use high temp paint, so we had to go with a gray tone, and it's mostly gray. Basically, we're looking at some things to help beautify the training center. We're kind of limited on some things because we thought a row of popular trees or something maybe along there would help fence some of that stuff off a little bit. But with us being on the airport ground, we have to get approval and all that stuff. So we are looking at ways to really shape that up. But it looks pretty nice out there now, I think.
Okay, I think even just painting it, I think, is probably going to go a long
Yeah.
way from the concerns that I've had. So thank you.
Doug, I've got a comment and then a question. First of all, the comment is I really appreciate the monthly reports you send out. I mean, I think we tend to forget how busy your departments are. I mean, it's really helpful to keep that in front of us on a regular basis. So I really appreciate that. Second, it's an accounting question, so I guess I'll maybe direct them more towards Shelley. Back to the utilities for just a minute. The utilities transfers roughly $100,000 per month, give or take, back to the city. I think we're budgeting 1.25 million roughly this next year. Okay, that all comes into the general fund as essentially miscellaneous income or reimbursements, whatever we call it. Part of that would arguably be for services that you provide, that your department provides in maintaining the water system for the utilities. Does it make a difference from an accounting standpoint if we work it's all part of our general fund? Your departments versus the other parts of general fund. Does it make a difference if we were to attempt to allocate part of that back to the fire department budget?
Not necessarily. That transfer is for a lot of different things. Part of it is an admin fee, because we do have some shared services that are done through the finance office. Part of that is way back when it was kind of supposed, we pay the utilities for utilities. We pay for electric, gas, water as a city. There's a lot of communities that don't do that because we're basically billing ourselves. We're taking it out of this pocket and we're putting it into this pocket. And so part of that transfer was also supposed to kind of give money back to the city in lieu of us paying those utility fees because they're an enterprise fund. And then that would include those hydrant rental services. So, you know, it already kind of is figured in. You know, it hasn't equaled what we pay out versus what we get in, but you know, that's just something that, again, they kind of make that determination of what they want to transfer in, but it kind of goes to the whole city, what we pay in utilities and the services that we get and admin fees.
So as far as trying to divvy up the reimbursement we get back from the utilities, there's really no substance or benefit to doing that.
No, especially with the fire department inside the general fund. That's really where all of that comes for the general operations of the city.
Doug, the fire truck that you plan on purchasing, will it replace or be added to the fleet?
Well, it will depend on a couple things, but basically what we'd be replacing is a 1989 pumper, and we're looking at the value of that and things like that, but we're not 100% sure at this point. The one thing we might consider is using it for our ISO rating that we do have coming up in a couple of months. We have to do an ISO audit. And so what we'd like to do is gain that point on that truck for a number of years and also use it for our training center. The benefit of that is we could pull that truck out there and train with it. If we actually have a fire call, we would not have to take any equipment off our truck like hoses and things like that. So we may use that for a while out there as well as our ISO rating. Obviously, there's a reason we're replacing it, and that's watching our maintenance and stuff like that. So if we can keep it as a reserve pumper and it doesn't cost much and the value of the truck is not that high, we may consider keeping that. And that's obviously a year plus down the road. It takes about a year to build a fire truck, so we're going to be getting aggressive on going out to bid so we can actually get it in 2018. So I think towards the end of 2018 we'll look that over and make that decision depending on what's going. So,
well, at that time you'll get probably a trade-in value versus a non-trade-in value and then make that decision at that point. And weigh that on what the benefit would be to keep it versus the ISO rating in the training center versus what our trade-in value was. And obviously, at some point, the maintenance is not going to be worth sticking any high dollars into a truck like that. So, I think the last time I checked, some of them trucks are about that $5,000 range. $7,500. So
they don't hold their value.
Yeah, it's been a good truck.
So. Is that the oldest truck in the fleet then, that 89?
Yes, that's our oldest pumper, yep. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Any other questions on the fire part of it? Oh, yeah, the 2000. You had kind of started making that motion, Mike. Did you want to
I would like to
officially
make a motion
that
where we add back into the
siren
fire
maintenance line item?
Yep, the $2,000 back into the siren maintenance.
Okay.
Okay. We have a motion by Danforth and a second by Y.
Mm-hmm.
Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed signify by saying nay. Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kristen. Somebody's got to keep us on task here. Okay, we'll move to ambulance department.
Okay, I'll just briefly go through the 2017 accomplishments. We did add the new Type 3 remount ambulance. That's our first remount. We did take our old 2010 model that was a diesel, and that was a Type 3, which means it's a van-style box, a chassis with a square box on it. And so we have a couple of those. They work really well for transfers. We did remount that onto a gas engine, a brand new Ford, and that came in at about $123,000 roughly, and we had a budget of $180,000. So pretty significant decrease in that line item. To this point, it's working well. It's like a new rig. It's it serves us well we use it a lot in transfers, so it really does us a good job. So we'll monitor all of our chassis coming up, and I believe that it's working well enough to where we can possibly do a couple more down the road and see how this gas engine works, or if we should be going back to a diesel. So the next item, we are going into we received 5 new LED digital innovation devices for advanced airways. It's just a better device to help us get that innovation with that airway. Our department has went to rapid sequence innovation, just in the process of it. So just some more tools and technology to help us make sure basically what we do is if someone's having a problem with their airway, we'll paralyze them and for a brief moment, and so that we paralyze everything so they quit breathing. They'll have a gag reflex, and that's when we can't put the tube down there. So if we paralyze them, basically we'll be able to intubate the patient and control that airway. So that's basically what that means. So the next item is the software image trend. I'd just like to briefly touch on that. That has been some really amazing software for us. We do our patient care reports on that, our EMS software. It gives us so much information. It's right over in Lakeville, Minnesota. We know everything from our busiest times of days, our busiest days of the week, and how many calls we have in the city limits, how many outside the city limits. We break everything down into zones, and I would do the same this next year, probably to try and break our EMS down into three zones as well, just to get a feeling on if we had those zones for an East Fire Station at some point down the road, what those call volumes would look like and things like that. What our response times would be. So we can put out heat maps, and I think it's just a great software for the dollars, and really serves us well. Company's very good to work with, and helps us. We can customize that software to anything we want it to do, and that's what helps build our monthly reports. 2018 revised our public access defibrillator program. Basically, right now we have about 200 or 200 plus defibrillators within the community of Watertown. That number is growing. We are educating the public to make sure they know we partnership up with Prairie Lakes Hospital, and we do have some certain grants available. If nothing else, you can get a reduced cost on a defibrillator going through the program because we're part of a network. Also, we want to go out and go into the community and make sure everybody knows that they have to do annual maintenance and stuff. So we just inspect them to make sure they're still there in place and in good working condition. If they need to be updated, we advise them to do that. We don't do that for them. It's their equipment, but we make sure they know how to get new batteries and stuff. So we want to make sure that program is working really well. We also have in the back of all the squad cars for the police department, and a lot of times they're on scene before EMS, and that has really been a benefit to us because the police officers are all well trained in them, and they'll be doing CPR, and they'll have defibrillation before we even arrive sometimes. So that's good. The other thing that we're looking at is researching in 2019, looking at a new Type 1 ambulance. We're currently on a schedule of getting an ambulance every other year. We put about 70,000 miles on our rigs in a year's time. And the Type 1 is a pickup style, heavier chassis, 4-wheel drive. It really works good around around town, and it gets around the snow and the rough terrains and stuff. So it's really a workhorse. And the Type 3s really seem to work well for going down the road and transfer. Both rigs are interchangeable, so we can take this rig down the road as well as a Type 3 can go on in-town emergencies. They both have great room and things like that. So that's what we're currently looking at. And in 2019 and beyond, just providing our community with the best public service and customer service that we possibly can. And always look. EMS is really advancing and with technology and stuff, and we don't want to be the first one to take on new technology as fast as it changes, but we also don't want to be the last one. So we research a lot of stuff, and my staff does a wonderful job of helping me with everything and planning for that if it's a good idea to plan for that far enough in advance. The other thing in 2017, we're running right at about 2,500 calls, and I think we're increasing about 40 to 60 calls a year on average, about 2.5%. So, will that trend continue to go that way? We're not 100% sure. We are currently 100% all paramedics at Watertown Fire, and that's quite an accomplishment. So you're always going to have an advanced life support staff on that rig, no matter as long as we have an ambulance available. And I contribute that to the Lake Area Technical College, the Fire Med program. They put out a great student that's trained in firefighting as well as a paramedic. So that's really been a benefit to our community. So, and then just moving on to the budget. I'm sorry, a little bit on the. We did increase our revenues this year, 13%, $120,000. We're reluctant to raise that too much and too quickly and too far in advance because of all the changes in Medicare, along with insurances and stuff and politics and stuff. So we're cautious, but we will be coming in higher than our increase in 2017, and feel comfortable that number will be a safe and conservative revenue number. So moving down to personal services, just adjusting cost, things like that. Equipment maintenance, we did increase that $1,000. Some of those diesels are very expensive. The nice thing about the gas motor that we only have one, but the maintenance is a lot cheaper to work on a gas motor than it is a diesel. Motor fuel, we did lower that by $1,000, and we did that because we've had fairly stable fuel prices, but we did take in consideration that fuel might go up some here, but we still feel pretty comfortable on what our fuel costs are and stuff for the year, and we're able to reduce that. Medical supplies, as our call volume increases, we struggle to keep ahead of the game, but so we increase that a little bit. The other item that we looked at for capital purchases is the LifePak 15 monitor. These are the newer monitors, and we replace them every so often to keep those updated. The LifePak 12 is the older unit. This unit here is we're able to send a 12 lead right up to the ER, and basically if the patient needs to go to the cath lab with chest pain, they see the rhythm and they're ready to go right when they hit the doors. They sometimes will bypass ER just off our information that we're giving them, and we know what to look for. The only other thing I would like to add about my EMS budget is we would like to, when we, if approved with the fire marshal, we would eventually put the fire prevention officer. That would go away, that would go on a shelf, and in case that department would ever increase at some point in the distant future. But we would use that for the EMS assignment, that position. So what we do is we're working at 12-hour shifts right now on the Pittman schedule, so that would allow us to have 2 firefighters that would work 12 hours a day, 7 days a week. And we're we're just as busy, honestly, on a Sunday as we are on a Monday, within reason. So right now our data's new, but we're trying to distinguish that. But basically, we would have a 12-hour shift every day with one firefighter. That has really, even though our call volume is increasing, that has reduced our overtime. We did drop our overtime, even with the increase, did drop our overtime going into the 2018 budget by $12,000. Also reduced our part-time staff. So between the two, we reduced staffing and overtime by $25,000. So some of that is increased. We're working right now with 2 firefighters in that position on the 40 hours because we were granted a temporary position for the hospital, and the increase in calls, fixed wings and helicopters and stuff. So that's what that is, and it's really worked well because as you see, our numbers keep going up, but our overtime is kind of stabilizing. We kind of think we know where that's going to be and stuff, and we're working to reduce that. So that is about what I have on EMS.
So I want a clarification on your last point here, and then I have a question. Are you asking us to retain or keep that position in so that you can hire this other? Is that what you're asking of us, and is it not included in here now?
No, it would be with the fire marshal. We would take and eliminate the fire prevention officer,
right?
Which is an assignment on fire, which is partial salary from EMS as well. And we would just take that from a fire prevention officer and change it to EMS assignment. So fire prevention assignment to EMS assignment. So
okay, but you're asking then for an additional employee. One would be an upgrade.
No, actually what we're asking for is one additional employee and an upgrade, if you will. Yes.
And has that been discussed? Is that not in here now?
Yes.
It is. The only way that the position, the only way would be is if Chip is promoted. And basically that's the scenario, is if the fire marshal position is open and Chip is promoted, that would make his fire prevention officer assignment open. And so what they're asking is for that fire prevention officer assignment not to be filled and to substitute that with that 40-hour EMS assignment, basically. So we're just trading it because you don't need a fire marshal and a fire prevention officer. So they would just fill Chip's vacant position with that 40-hour position that would offset that Pittman schedule.
Okay.
Versus him working 8 to 5 Monday through Friday.
Okay, and so my question is all of that
Yes.
desire reflected in what's in this budget?
Yes, because the fire marshal is 100% in fire because they won't do any EMS.
Okay.
And Chip is still in there in his 80-20 capacity. Yes.
Then maybe this is a Shelley issue or Doug, but where do all the write-offs that we do, where are they reflected in our budget?
In the revenue section. So basically...
Net? Is it net of write-offs or?
Yes.
Oh, it is.
So, yep. So basically every month Patty gives us a list of everybody that she bills. And then when she receives payment from Medicare, they say we'll pay 300 of this 2,000, kind of what it seems like. And this much you have to write off because we don't pay any more. So then she will give us a monthly list of all of the rest of the bills that we're not going to ever get paid for, and then we write that back off because it's in the same year. So we basically just readjust the revenue.
Okay, so it's just a net number.
Yep.
That's reflected, okay.
Yep.
Doug, I think at one time you had went to and correct me if I'm wrong, a third-party collection agency to collect some of that was non-Medicaid, Medicare related. Is there success in that?
So what happens when we officially write it off our books on the monthly council meetings? What that does is then that gets turned over to a collection agency, and I haven't tracked that lately, but we were picking up some minimal amounts. I want to say 3 to 4% estimate of those dollars get picked up. So what they do is once we write them off, they're no longer in that revenue account. So if we do collect any of that, that goes into general revenue, miscellaneous revenue account. So that's gets put in a different account because that's money we've taken out of our accounting. So.
Any
Hey,
other?
Chief, I do have one question. What, you say you have defibrillators sold to businesses. What is the cost on that, and who are potential users? Are they retail places or personal businesses, things of that nature?
Could you repeat that? I'm sorry, I didn't hear the first part.
The defibrillators that are sold to businesses, what does it cost on one of those? And then what type of businesses are purchasing it? Is it a retail store, a big box store, a grocery store, things of that nature? Who's
Defibrillators. Who's buying those?
Okay. Well, that's a very good question. So anybody that wishes to have a defibrillator can qualify for one, and all it is if we don't have the grant dollars, which will reduce a little bit, at least they can buy it through the network. I believe all the above. Anybody can buy those. There's no roadblocks on that because all you are doing is buying a bulk rate, if you will. I do know. I believe our new rec center put about I want to say 6 or 7 of them in around the building and stuff. So we encourage anybody that's interested in one to contact Watertown Fire Rescue, and we'll help them with the details.
Do you do training for that then too, so they're fully aware on how to use it?
Yes, we do provide initial training for that unit. So.
Okay.
And some of that is done right now in CPR and AED training. So AED is part of your CPR training now, and the nice thing about it is basically there's not as much liability as you'd think in that it's there for the public more so than the staff on board having to be trained. Although it's very much a benefit, the beauty is we want to make sure that these are operating and the batteries are in good condition. So.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions, comments, concerns about the budget? Okay. It is about 8 o'clock. Does anybody need to take a short break? Okay, we'll take a 5-minute break.